Two people, same age, same starting point, same skills, give or take, same hours in the day. One of them somehow keeps ending up in the right rooms. The right contacts find them. The right opportunities show up at the right moment. Their career bends upward, like an invisible hand is pushing it. The other one works just as hard, maybe harder, and stays exactly where they started. From the outside, we have one word for the difference: luck. We call it luck because the alternative is uncomfortable. The alternative would mean that maybe the gap between those two people has almost nothing to do with effort and everything to do with a hidden pattern that's been sitting in plain sight for more than 100 years, in a corner of math most people fall asleep in. What if the thing that separates the people who break out from the ones who stay average is not how hard they work? It is where they put the work. Stay here, because what comes next is going to flip the way you look at every choice you make, every email you send, every dinner you accept, every customer you serve, every friend you spend time with. By the end of this, you'll understand why most people stay average their whole lives, even when they are trying their best. Before we get to the math trick that breaks the pattern, you have to understand the mental model that's been quietly running your life since the day you were born. We grow up trained to think in averages: the average grade, the average salary, the average price, the average height, weight, age, performance. It's the first lens we learn to use to understand the world, and it works, kind of, because a huge number of things in real life actually do follow a pattern called the normal distribution. Height in a population follows it, weight follows it, human intelligence follows it, body temperature, noise levels, the size of leaves on a tree, the amount of a typical product people use in a day. All of those things cluster around a middle point. Most cases are in the middle. The extreme cases are rare. If you drew it on a graph, it would look like a bell. A small bump on the left for the rare low cases, a huge bump in the middle for everybody who is roughly average, and a small bump on the right for the rare high cases. This is the shape your brain uses without you knowing. You assume people are average. You assume opportunities are average. You assume the value you produce will be average. The customers you get will spend an average amount. Your relationships will have an average importance. The average becomes the default expectation for everything in your life. And here is where the trap closes. There's a whole other category of things that does not follow this rule at all, and almost nobody is paying attention to it. The normal distribution is comfortable, simple, easy to picture. But the world we live in now is not simple anymore. In today's world, more and more things do not cluster in the middle. They concentrate at the extremes. A man named Vilfredo Pareto noticed it more than 100 years ago. He was an Italian thinker, and one day he was looking at something completely unrelated to motivation or success. He was looking at who owned the land in Italy. What he found shocked him. 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the population. 80 by 20. That alone should make you sit up. But it gets stranger, because since the day Pareto wrote that down, this exact same pattern has shown up everywhere you look. 80% of results come from 20% of efforts. 90% of a company's revenue comes from 10% of its clients. 99% of internet traffic goes to 1% of websites. This is not a normal distribution. This is something else completely. This is the Pareto distribution. If you drew it on a graph, it would not look like a bell at all. It would look like a slide, huge on one side and falling sharply as you move to the right. Most of the value sits at one extreme. The middle is almost empty, and the other extreme is almost nothing. In a normal distribution, the middle is where the action is. In a Pareto distribution, the middle is the trap. This is the part most people never figure out in their entire lives. If 20% of your actions are producing 80% of your results, then spreading your time, your energy, and your money evenly across everything is the worst thing you can do. You are not in a fair game. You are in a game where one corner of the board has almost all the value, and the rest of the board has almost none. That corner is where luck actually lives, and it has been sitting there the whole time, waiting for somebody to notice. Let's look at what this looks like in real life, because the moment you see it, you can never unsee it. Take something almost everyone has done at some point: sending emails. You could send 1,000 generic emails to 1,000 strangers, hoping that maybe a few of them will reply. It feels productive. It feels like volume. It feels like you are doing something. Or you could send a few dozen emails, just a few dozen, but each one written specifically for the person who is going to read it. Their name, their situation, their actual problem, their real interests. The first approach feels like reach. The second feels like a waste of time because there are so few emails going out. But here is what almost always happens. The 1,000 generic emails get ignored, filed in the trash, deleted in the first second. The few dozen personalized ones get answered. Some lead to conversations, some to deals, some to relationships that change a whole career. Fewer emails, aimed at the right people, end up generating more income than thousands of random ones. You did less work, but you placed the work in the corner of the graph where the value lives. That is Pareto, in real life, in your inbox. Now imagine the same idea, but with money. And what you decide here might be the most important business decision you ever make. Picture this. You have €1,000 or $1,000, however you want to think about it. And you have two options. Option 1, spend that money on ads on social media. It seems like the obvious move. Ads are easy to measure. You can see clicks. You can see views. You can scale them up if they work. It is the modern, smart, data-driven way to do things. Option 2, take the same 1,000 and use it to invite 10 key people in your industry to a single business lunch. Just 10 people, around one table, sharing one meal. On paper, option 1 looks better. It scales. It is measurable. It feels professional. It feels safe. But think about what could happen at that lunch. What if just one of those 10 people connects you to the perfect business partner? What if one of them closes a deal with you that pays back the lunch 100 times over? What if one of them recommends you to somebody whose name you would not even have dared to write down on your dream list? That single connection, that one human moment around a table, can be worth more than 1,000 clicks, more than 2,000, sometimes more than 10,000. That is the 80-20 rule in action. That is the Pareto Principle, told through a plate of food. And it explains something almost no business school will tell you out loud. The biggest opportunities of your life usually do not come from doing more. They come from being in the right room. It goes deeper than emails and lunches. The same rule decides who your most important customers are. And almost every business in the world gets this part wrong. Paul Graham, a thinker and investor who has helped build some of the biggest companies in the modern internet age, once said something that should be written on the wall of every founder. I have never seen a startup regret treating its first customers exceptionally well. Read that again, slowly. Your first customers are not just customers. They are not just numbers in a spreadsheet, not just entries in a database. They are your 1%. The people who saw what you were building before anybody else did. The people who said yes when nobody knew your name. The people who handed you their trust when you had nothing to give them in return except a promise. Here is where most businesses get it wrong. They treat all their customers the same. Same emails, same responses, same level of attention. They divide their effort evenly across everybody, as if every customer were equal. The people who saw what you were building before anybody else did. The people who said yes when nobody knew your name. The people who handed you their trust when you had nothing to give them in return, except a promise. Here is where most businesses get it wrong. They treat all their customers the same. Same emails, same responses, same level of attention. They divide their effort evenly across everybody, as if every customer were equal. But customers are not equal. Pareto already told us this. 90% of revenue often comes from 10% of clients. Sometimes a few specific customers carry the whole business on their shoulders without realizing it. If you treat them the same as everybody else, you are spreading your resources flat across a graph that is not flat. You are giving the most love to the people who care the least, and the least love to the people who care the most. The smart move is the opposite. Invest heavily in that 1% who truly need what you offer, the ones who really value what you do, the ones who refer you without being asked, the ones who stay for years. A business can be convenient for many people, but it is crucial for only a few. Focus on the few. Now we arrive at the place where the Pareto Principle stops being about money and starts being about something much more important, something we almost never think about clearly, even though it shapes our whole life. How many people can you have a real, life-changing conversation with? Not a chat about the weather, not a polite catch-up, a real conversation. The kind that leaves you different than how you arrived. Most people would say, I have a lot of friends, I have a big network, I know a lot of people. But there is something called Dunbar's number, named after the researcher who discovered it. It says that the human brain can only maintain around 150 stable social relationships. After that, your connections start to get shallow, distant, surface level. They are people you know, but you do not really know. 150 is the ceiling. And inside that 150, the rule of extremes kicks in again. You do not need more friends. You need deeper relationships with the right ones. Think about your own life for a second. Really think about it. Out of all the people you know, How many would actually pick up the phone at 3 in the morning if you needed them? How many would tell you the truth, even when the truth is hard to hear? How many would push you to be a better version of yourself instead of telling you what you want to hear? How many would be there in the moments that actually matter? Not the parties, not the celebrations, the hospital, the breakdown, the bad news, the fear nobody else sees. If you can name 4 or 5 people who fit that description, you are richer than most, because 4 or 5 real people, the right kind of real people, are worth more than 100 empty friendships. The Pareto rule is not just a money tool, it is a life tool. A few relationships carry the weight, the rest is just noise. So why does this work? Why does this rule keep showing up everywhere? And why is almost nobody using it? The answer is both simple and almost insulting in its simplicity. It works because nobody else is doing it. Most people only know how to think in averages. They count, they measure volume. They look at metrics that reward effort instead of placement. They send more emails, they make more posts, they have more friends, they take more meetings, they serve more customers the same way. They mistake activity for progress. But the real value, the kind that actually changes a life or a business, is in the corner of the graph almost nobody looks at. The corner where effort and outcome are not proportional. The corner where a small, smart move produces a massive result. The corner where one tiny, well-placed action is worth 10 of the average ones, or 100, or sometimes 1,000. But the real value, the kind that actually changes a life or a business, is in the corner of the graph almost nobody looks at. The corner where effort and outcome are not proportional. The corner where a small, smart move produces a massive result. The corner where one tiny, well-placed action is worth 10 of the average ones, or 100, or sometimes 1,000. That corner is where the right contacts live, the perfect opportunities, the ideal timing. The kind of moments that from the outside look like pure luck, but it is not luck. It is geometry. It is somebody who, somewhere along the way, stopped thinking like the middle of the bell and started thinking like the extreme of the slide. Here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. Because once you know this, you cannot keep doing what you were doing. If you keep spreading your time evenly across everything, you will get average results. That is guaranteed. If you keep treating every customer the same, every project the same, every relationship the same, you will get the same outcome as everybody else doing the same thing. You will get average results. That is guaranteed. If you keep treating every customer the same, every project the same, every relationship the same, you will get the same outcome as everybody else doing the same thing. If you keep chasing volume in a world that rewards placement, you will keep wondering why other people seem to have all the luck. But if you stop, if you take a breath, if you look at your real life, your real work, your real relationships, and you ask yourself the right question, everything starts to change. The question is not, how do I do more? The question is, where is my 20%? What 20% of my actions is producing 80% of my results? What 10% of my clients is generating 90% of my revenue? What 4 or 5 people in my life are giving me the depth that the other 145 never will? The answers are sitting in your life right now. They have been sitting there the whole time. You just have not been looking in the corner of the graph where they live. Most people will not change after hearing this. That is exactly why this rule keeps working for the few who do. If everybody started focusing on their 20% tomorrow, the rule would lose its power, because the magic of Pareto is not just that it exists. The magic is that almost nobody acts on it. Most people will keep sending generic emails, spending money on ads instead of building real human connections, treating all their customers the same, collecting acquaintances instead of building friendships. And that means the corner of the graph stays wide open. For the few who decide to walk into it, looking from the outside, people will keep calling them lucky, the right contacts, the perfect opportunities, the ideal timing. But you will know better now. Because what we call luck is almost always a strategy that nobody else was willing to use. It is the willingness to do less of what everybody does and more of what almost nobody does. It is the patience to stop counting emails sent and start counting connections built. It is the courage to bet everything on a small lunch with the right 10 people instead of 1,000 ads to 10,000 strangers. It is the discipline to invest in the customers who really care instead of spreading thin across the ones who barely notice you exist. It is the wisdom to choose 4 or 5 people who change your life instead of 100 who barely remember your name. Most people will stay average, not because they are not smart, not because they do not work hard, but because they keep playing a game whose rules were never explained to them. You just got the rules. The question is not whether the Pareto Principle works. It has worked for over 100 years. It is working right now, in your industry, in your relationships, in your inbox, while you are listening to this. The only question is whether you are going to be one of the people who keep spreading flat across the graph, or one of the rare few who finally walks over to the corner where the value actually lives, because that is where the real luck is. It is not random. It never was. It is working right now, in your industry, in your relationships, in your inbox, while you are listening to this. The only question is whether you are going to be one of the people who keeps spreading flat across the graph, or one of the rare few who finally walks over to the corner where the value actually lives, because that is where the real luck is. It is not random. It never was. Who keeps spreading flat across the graph, or one of the rare few who finally walks over to the corner where the value actually lives, because that is where the real luck is. It is not random. It never was.